I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. This is the last day of our webinar series on research methodology. I think all research participants here have got a, a kind of a basic understanding. I wouldn't say that, it has been a thorough understanding because there's still lots to learn. So this has been a kind of a basic understanding for a researcher to really understand what the research process is, and throughout this process, what is that he needs to concentrate on, and where is that he has to go. So this webinar series has kind of given a pathway to the researchers as to which path that they have to follow. Now, coming to the last stage, that is report writing. As I told all of you that if we take that research is around 100%, 40% of it constitutes planning. So planning is the major part of your research, and if planning is done, if clarity is sought, then all others fall in place. So the remaining 45%, as I told you, is your entire data collection and analysis, and the last stage, that is the 15%, is your report writing. So please note that whatever you have done in the form of your research ultimately has to be presented. So presentation of your research is one of the most important aspects, whether be it a report in the form of a dissertation or a thesis, or it can be in the form of publishing of paper. So the weightage given to both is almost the same. In fact, for paper publishing, you take up a particular area and maybe the number of pages could be a little less, say around 15 to 20 pages. Whereas your research, again, it depends, around 200 to 250 pages. Now, most important thing is, once you are in the process of writing your report, make sure that at every stage you're having rough drafts. So, when you're writing the introduction, let it be, you start with a working draft, and then for review of literature also you start with a working draft. So make sure that you have working drafts for each and every chapter that you are doing. This is something that is most important. Now, another important aspect for a researcher is plagiarism. Now, plagiarism for each and every university, it varies. So as far as possible, make sure that while you're writing itself, kind of it is not plagiarized. So for that, you have lots of online, softwares. Like something like CheckerX. It's a very nice software. As in, when you write, you can do a plagiarism test. So, of course, at the end, you have to turn it in. That's a very, very good software. So if you really want to kind of see at every stage of your writing, I would recommend you people to go into CheckerX. You can put it on your desktop. So once you put it on your desktop, at every stage when you are typing, you can every para, that is, you cannot put in lots of data into that. Every paragraph can be checked whether it is plagiarized or not. So that is a very important stage when it comes to report writing. So, as in when you keep writing, just make sure that, it passes that plagiarism check. So whether it is, 25% allowed in universities or 15% allowed in universities. So make sure at every stage that, it passes through that plagiarism test, because even 5 continuous words that you're writing and somebody has already done that, it will show you as plagiarized. So it's a very, very difficult task. Report writing is really, now it's becoming more challenging. Now let us go into the entire report. An entire report consists of 3 important parts. One is called as the prefactory items. The second one is called as the body of the report, and the third one is called as the terminal items. Now, as far as the prefactory items are concerned, it mainly depends on the university. Of course, if you are having a paper, all this is not required, these contents. But if you are doing a dissertation, of course, or a thesis, again, this is required. So these are the prefactory items that are to be included. Now, the second important thing the body of the report. The body of the report is most important. Just a minute. Okay, so we will move on. After prefactory items, the most important comes your body of the report. This is something that carries 95% of your weightage. So the body of the report, now this, whether be it a paper or whether be it a dissertation, this content remains the same. So if we are looking into the parts, only thing is in a paper it will be more concise in form, and in a dissertation it will be more elaborate. So each one will be a separate chapter, whereas there in a paper each one will be a separate heading. When we look into the body of the report, as I told you, data analysis is almost 50% of your report. So if I'm taking, let us say, 200 pages of my report, then at least I must have 100 pages of data analysis and interpretation. This is something very, very important. Again, my review of literature, as I told you while doing review of literature, it must be around 1/5. So around, if you're taking 200 pages, 40 pages must be review of literature. Research design may constitute around, 10 pages roughly. Introduction should be around, let us say 30 to 40 pages. Data analysis, if you're not able to get around half, that is 100 pages, at least you should be able to get 40%. So roughly around 75 to 80 pages you must be able to get data analysis and interpretation. Why I'm telling you this is, see, when it comes to data analysis and interpretation, you have three important parts. One, you are going to give the sample summary. The second is, or the demographic profile. The second is, for each of the construct and dimension, you're going to give descriptive statistics, that is your mean and standard deviation scores. And when it comes to your inferential statistics, you're not only going to give inferential analysis, you're also going to give testing of hypotheses. So even around, if you keep around 4 to 5 hypotheses, I think together all this will come up to around 70 to 80 pages. So your introduction around 40 pages, review of literature around 40 pages, research design around 10 pages. Of course, industry profile, if you're doing on a specific industry, some people may include industry profile, that depends on your dissertation. Data analysis and interpretation around 70 pages to 80. Summary of findings, conclusion and suggestions, I don't think, a total of around maximum of 15 pages. It will take around 10 to 12 pages, not more than that. This is an approximate I'm giving. Again, plus or minus can always be there. Now, what is that you have to do in the introduction chapter? How do you go about doing the introduction chapter? Now, in the introduction chapter, what I would suggest to you is start with the global scenario and end it with the current topic that you have taken. Now, let us say I'm doing it on, human resource management. So my initial write-up should start with how it evolved. That is, it started with personnel management, and then it moved on to human resource management, and then currently it is the era of strategic human resource management. So this is how the flow should go. Suppose it is finance, how it entirely started with the basics. Let us say I'm doing on capital structure, so I start off with how entirely this concept of finance emerged. Then what are the various decisions that are taken in finance, and then we come to the theories of capital structure, and then we speak about theories of Modigliani and Miller. So it's a kind of a flow. It should come like a story, and ultimately it should end with your area of research. So it's just like funneling down. So start with the broad area in the global perspective, come to the Indian perspective, and come to your area of study. This is how your introduction should be. And again, as I told you, introduction should be based on your concepts. Introduction should be based on your concepts. So when I mean by concepts, you start off with what are the two main constructs that you've taken, and from the main constructs, what are the various dimensions that you've taken. So this is the flow in which the researcher needs to go when it comes to introduction. Again, numbering and all that, it is based on your the university that you're doing. So that again, go as per the norms of the university. The second important chapter that you need to follow is the review of literature. Now, what is that you need to note under review of literature? I would just like to give you another file which I have considered here. I've just given a particular example of how review of literature has to be done. This that word file. That's the thesis. Okay, now this is one example for review of literature what I have taken. I've just taken one dimension called as organizational learning capabilities. So as you know, it should start off in the chronological order. Again, it should start off with who exactly developed that particular concept. Again, what was the conceptual model that they started off with when it came to that particular concept or dimension? Then how people have gone about, over a period of time. That is, what are the variables that they have taken? What are the methods that they have used to measure this particular construct or dimension? And what are the findings of that particular construct? This is something that a researcher needs to go forward. Now, very important, if you're using Mendeley and you're writing this kind of review of literature, it's very easy for you. Now, let us say, for example, I start with Collis, 1994. Automatically, that bibliography will be recorded when it comes to review of literature in Word. So I keep typing this, and at the end, if I go to Word and give insert bibliography, automatically I will get the bibliography. So, let us say there was one person who developed the scale for this particular organizational learning capabilities, that is Chiva. I have already sent you the scale that has been developed by them. So according to the order, chronological order, you can go. Now, one more thing when it comes to review of literature is writing your end notes. This is something that is very, very important. There are certain universities which are going to tell you whether you should have end notes at the end of each and every chapter, or you will, have to kind of give footnotes. Now, what is the difference between a footnote and an end note? Now, once we use the word footnote, that means to say at the end of every page, you give what is called as a number against each and every author, and at the end of the page itself, you are giving the citation. This is called as a footnote. Okay. Or you can follow what is called as an end note. Now, what do you mean by an end note? An end note is at the end of the chapter, you give references to that chapter. Now, it's very important for you, after you finish review of literature, it's very important for you to give a conclusion. Now, what is the conclusion that you are going to give? Now, especially when you're giving a conclusion, please remember that when you conclude, it must relate to your objective. So, have you formulated, what kind of hypothesis have you formulated from this kind of research? What research was evident in that particular area? And how is that you are using it for the purpose of setting hypothesis? This is something what you need to show in your research. And also at the end of that particular chapter, please note here, you will get what is called as this kind of end notes. So at the end of review of literature chapter, if you go, you will see, suppose the first person whom I cited was Collis. So as soon as I give Collis, I will get the details or the citation of that particular research. So this depends on the university. whether they ask you to prepare footnotes or whether they ask you to prepare the end notes. Now, that depends on your discussion with the research supervisor as well as the university. So this is a format for review of literature. Again, it must go in the chronological order. This is something that is very important when it comes to review of literature. Now, the next thing, I will just continue with my PPT. Now, after review of literature, the third important thing is your research design. When it comes to your research design, please note, this is a research plan. So initially, when you're giving the synopsis, it will be a rough draft. And when you're continuing it with, kind of the final draft, your research design would have changed. Because in the process, you will identify that your sampling technique may be different, your category of respondents might change, okay, your sample size might change. Nevertheless, for some, even the objectives and the title also might change. So, initially the synopsis or the research plan, what you give, it might be different from the research design, what you're going to present at the end. That's definitely not an issue, because once you analyze the data, it's then only that you understand what exactly your research design is. I've seen many researchers who do reverse engineering, that is, from the data analysis they arrive at the objective, and sometimes they arrive at the title. So this also happens in research. Now, research design, I think in the second session, we have already discussed in detail as to what are the contents of a research design. Why I'm stressing very much on this research design is, today when theses are evaluated, more of weightage is given to the review of literature, your research design, and of course your finding, suggestion, and conclusion. So why I'm not stressing much on data analysis and interpretation is, whatever you analyze and interpret, ultimately you're going to give that in the form of findings. So try to concentrate more on research design. A research design will give you the entire details of the research. So if you're putting in the conceptual model, or you are showing the hypothesis, what is given, the objectives, please make sure that there is clarity in what you're giving, especially when it comes to the research design. Now, what I will do is, I will just be showing you what exactly you have to do when it comes to starting off a particular chapter. I've seen many theses, as far as the chapter is concerned, usually people give an introduction of what exactly that chapter contains. Please do not give the definition of these particular topics. I've seen many researchers, suppose they are starting with research design as their second chapter. I've seen people writing what is research design as introduction. Never do that. You are not supposed to write what is a research design. In fact, I'll show you one thesis, how they have done that. They will start off with, suppose I start with the chapter as research design, they will start off saying that research design is a blueprint of the research, so a research design, contains this, or something like, what is a research design. Please don't do that. This is the ideal way of showing what a research design, or at the beginning of every chapter, it is very important for you to write a brief about what exactly is the content of that particular chapter. Why I've given you research design is, most of you know what are the contents, and it is general and common. So suppose I'm starting off my research design chapter, my introduction will say, this chapter deals with the statement of the problem, the objectives, the scope of the study, the operational definition of concepts, what are the sampling method, design, and somebody joined. So what are the tests for validity and reliability, what is the plan of analysis, and what is the limitations of the study. So all this is given as an introduction and brief. So after this, you can start off with your content. So in every chapter, make sure that you are giving a kind of a summary of what exactly the chapter deals with in the beginning, especially when it comes to data analysis, when it comes to review of literature, how you've gone about doing that particular chapter. It can be either in the form of paragraph or it can be in the form of bullet points. This is something that is very, very important. Another example what I've taken is, let us say the example I have usually taken, title of the study. So this is the title I've given: the effect of human resource practices on employee well-being, an analytical study. Now this is something where it has the constructs and it's very broad. So I've just used the word analytical study. So I can use any research technique in that. Okay. So let's say I also gave another example, like a comparative analysis of financial performance of State Bank of India and Bank of India. So that again is a very broad topic. So if I'm using the word financial performance, I can use various parameters. Now let us say I very specifically mentioned ratio analysis. I specifically mentioned something like shareholder wealth. So what happens is, once we kind of give specific terms, our research area becomes very specific. So as far as possible in the title, make sure that it's a little broad, so that tomorrow if there are any issues also with a particular tool or technique, you can change that tool or technique. So the title as far as possible must be broad, and also it must relate to particular concepts or constructs. Again, what are the contents of a research plan? Again, we have already discussed that, but I've just given you this as what are the contents that have to be included when it comes to a research report. So a research report must have a research gap, then review of literature. Of course, the order changes with different universities. Some universities may opt for different kinds of the order. Of course, the content remains the same. You might change the order. So try as far as possible to give a conceptual model, the hypothesis, operational definitions of concepts. All these need clarity should be given. That is, where you have collected the data, what are the tools for data collection, what is the sampling sample size, what is the sampling technique, what is your category of respondents, what are the statistical tools and techniques you are using, what are the research instruments that you're using, what is the limitation of your study. All this you should be able to put it in your research plan. Now let us say, for example, for the previous title, what was there, I've just managed to put a few objectives. The first one I've given is to understand the theoretical framework of human resource practices in the Indian and the global scenario. Now this is a qualitative study that I will be doing. This doesn't require any kind of quantitative analysis. So this will be my first objective. So when I'm doing data analysis and interpretation, or when I'm writing my findings, I can go objective wise. So I can give it as objective 1 and state what is the theoretical framework when it comes to human resource practices. So under human resource practices, whatever the dimensions that I have taken, I have to write an entire review, again, a review of literature of how these concepts have emerged, but not necessarily review of literature, but when it comes to introduction and the review, I would have already given that, so it satisfies my objective 1. So in my findings only, I will give the summary of what is the theoretical framework. That is sufficient. So you need not specifically write a theoretical framework, because you've already covered that under introduction and review of literature chapter. All that you need to do is, in the findings, you can show it as objective 1, and you can give a list of what are the theoretical findings by studying this particular framework of human resource practices. Now, the second objective that I've given is to study whether there is a significant difference in the perception of managers on the employee well-being. Immediately when I'm using the word significant difference, I have taken that objective for testing of hypothesis. So once I have to test that hypothesis, If I use the word significant difference, what does that mean? I'm going to do a t-test. So yesterday we discussed about that. Whenever we are doing significant difference, I have to do a t-test. So this will come under inferential analysis. So objective 2, I will start with inferential analysis. Of course, for all this, I have to do descriptive statistics. Okay, that means to say for each and every dimension, I take the mean, standard deviation, and tell which has the higher mean and which dimension is a better dimension for that particular construct. The next one I have taken is, to analyze the effects of human resource practices on employee well-being. Now, under this major objective, I've taken 3 sub-objectives. So the first one is to study the direct effect, and the second 2 is using the mediator, that is using spirituality as one mediator, and second is using organizational learning capability as another mediator. So direct effect and indirect effect. Immediately, if I use the word direct and indirect effect, what will be? It will be an inferential statistics, and I will be doing an analysis based on SEM or based on path model or based on mediator moderator analysis. So as soon as you see your objective, you should be able to tell what statistical tool or a technique that you are using. So you are framing the objective, and this leads to a conceptual model and framing of hypothesis. So the same thing what I have done here is I've taken a conceptual model for this entire title that I have given. Okay, it's just a sample representation. That means to say, if I'm now what is this A1, B1 and all? They are all paths. So the direct path and the indirect path. So A2, B2 will be your indirect path using spirituality as a mediator. A1, B1 will be the path using organizational learning capabilities as the mediator, and C is the direct path. So we are trying to find out what is the direct effect and the indirect effect. Now that I have shown it in the form of a conceptual model. That's why I told you, when you're preparing the, when you're framing the title itself, you should have a rough of objectives, conceptual model, and also the hypothesis. Now for this entire title objectives, I formulated 4 hypotheses. As I told you, the first one, we wanted to study the significant difference of the perception of managers. So for that, we are going to use t-test. Now second one, again, there is no direct effect. Again, we have taken indirect effect, direct effect. So for all that, we can use regression, correlation as well as regression. So once you're formulating the hypothesis itself, make sure whether you're studying difference or you're studying relation. If you're studying differences, use t-test if it's a normal distribution. And if you are using an association, then you have to use correlation and regression. So while you are formulating your objectives, conceptual model and hypothesis, you should already know what are the statistical techniques that you are using. Now let us come to the next thing, that is your test of validity and reliability. So I told you, once you prepare a research instrument, the next important thing is a pilot study, and then you find out the Cronbach alpha. If you remember in the class, I told you. Now, usually under statistics, what happens if you're doing a multiple, this is Carl Pearson's coefficient, correlation coefficient. Now there, along with that, you also get, if you see what has been marked in red, that is called as your Cronbach alpha. So once you get your Cronbach alpha, you can just see here all are above 7.7. So I will say that the validity of the instrument is, or the reliability of that instrument is good. Again, for testing the validity, we will take AVE, that is average variance extract, and we will also calculate that. This is how you are going to present it. And please remember, while you are giving statistics it to a statistician, or you are getting it statistically done, you will not get the answers based on your dimensions. So you have to again rearrange most of them. Now next we will come to data analysis, how you are going to present data analysis. Now this I was talking about demographic profile. So for this, you will prepare, let us say now, 40% are male and 60% are female. Now, this is how I'm going to depict it when it comes to my research while I'm presenting it. Again, when it is a paper, we usually don't present it in the form of graph. That's why I told you descriptive demographic profile is never used for testing of hypothesis. It's not always used. So here, this you can just present it in the form of a table and a graph. And as I told you, there is nothing called as inference when it comes to this. It's only analysis. You're just summarizing it. So if you're writing it, you can just give a summary details of the demographic profile. Okay, the next important thing what you need to do is give descriptive statistics. So this is how you give a descriptive statistics. That is, you take all the, this ultimately I'm presenting it in the form of a table. So for each one, say for example, here there is strategic role of HR. So for each one, I have to find out the mean and I have to find out the standard deviation. So, and in that I find out which is the highest. This is descriptive statistics. Here I can give a kind of analysis and interpretation. Okay, so for each of the dimensions, we have different variables which we have taken. So under each of the variables, we have various items. So for each and every item, we are going to find out the mean and the standard deviation and give the analysis. This is called as descriptive statistics. Actually, I have just shown you one summary table, as I told you, for each and every item and each and every construct where dimension, you have to prepare separate tables which shows the mean and the standard deviation, and you can write analysis and interpretation for each of them. Okay, now let us say for example t-test. Now we've conducted a t-test where you want to find out the role of HR managers towards employee well-being. So you find that the perception of HR managers, which is given in yellow, is a little higher than the line managers. So they are giving HR managers are giving a better interpretation about the employee well-being. They're saying that of course human resource practices are definitely playing a better kind of what do you say, a role when it comes to employee well-being. So this is how you're going to depict it when it comes to t-test. So once you've conducted the t-test, this is how you're going to present it in the form of a table and a graph. Now the next important thing is, as I told you, inferential statistics. So if you're using constructs like as I gave you human resource practices and employee well-being, this is how you will get the multiple correlation table. So this is how you have to interpret the relationship between each and every dimension. So once you get, this is what a statistician will give you, but beyond this, it is your duty to see how you are going to write the analysis for that. So suppose I see that there is a 0.54 what the value is there. So how do I interpret 0.54? Whether there is a very high correlation, or whether there's a medium correlation, or whether there's a very low correlation. So this is how the inference is drawn when it comes to showing relationship and association. So usually when you're giving about relationship and association, you will give about what is the kind of whether there's a moderate correlation, whether there's a very high correlation, or whether there's very low correlation. This will be the kind of inference that you will be drawing. And once you draw this inference, as I told you, you go back to your research, review of literature, and see what are the other papers that have already been done in that particular area, and what is the conclusions they've drawn out of those numbers or values. This is something, a presentation, as I told you, is something that is very, very important for a researcher. Again, this is called as a Hayes regression model, which again shows you the direct and the indirect effect. For each and every path, you have separate models. That's why you have model 1, model 2, model 3. And you can also use this for control variables. This is one advantage of using Hayes regression model. And then yesterday, as I explained, R square and adjusted R square, this is how you will get it, the statistics. So this is how you will be interpreting. Now, say for example, if you're getting an R square of 0.712 when it comes to involvement, so you will be saying that, okay, 0.7 is the correlation. That means to say, the involvement is very high. Now, let us say, for example, under human resource practices, involvement gives 0.712, training 0.81, compensation is 0.68, work environment is 0.87. So, what can we conclude? Highest is among work environment. That means to say, work environment as a dimension plays a very important role when it comes to employee well-being. We can give inferences, we can draw inferences like this. Again, when it comes to organization learning capabilities, you can see the various coefficients, and based on that you need to draw inferences. This is when it comes to R square and adjusted R square. See, now I've just given a kind of how you write an inference. So the model summary of regression analysis showed R square and adjusted R square. From the above table, it is shown that 22% variation is explained in organizational learning capability due to HR practices, 18% in spirituality, and 48% in employee well-being. The rest 52% of the employee well-being is explained by other factors which are not a part of the study. So this is how you write inferences. And please remember, your inferences must be very crisp. Don't keep elaborating. And please don't write, say for example, don't write what is R square, adjusted R square when it comes to data analysis. Never write, suppose you're using t-test, don't write what is t-test when it comes to data analysis and interpretation. That is never required when it comes to the thesis. This I've just given you an example of how the analysis can be done through a PLSEM model. So how you have your latent variables and how you have your manifested variables, how are they shown. So you can use a lot. Amos is very nice, if you're using EFA and CFA, very nicely depicted. Okay. Now this is regarding your data analysis. Now the last chapter is regarding your summary of findings, conclusion and suggestions. Now whatever inferences you draw, that will be shown in your findings. Now summary of findings is usually shown under two headings. One is your general findings. Now the general findings is what you usually have seen regarding that particular aspect, which you have seen in your review of literature and your introduction. So if you have some general findings, you can give it under findings. Now if you specifically want to give sample summary under findings, you can show it under the heading called as sample summary and show the findings under that. But mainly you can concentrate on inferential findings and through testing of hypothesis. There are some universities which say that you have to write the findings objective wise, and some of them they don't insist on that. You can just keep your specific findings based on the hypothesis. So please clarify with your research supervisor as to how is that you have to present the summary of findings, because there are many people who say that as far as findings are concerned, it's only the qualitative matter that you need to give. You need not give numbers. So some people are against that and they say that no, even numbers has to be included. So to get that clarity, please consult your research guide and based on that you need to do. Now coming to conclusion. Again, what should the conclusion include? Please remember, conclusions are answers to your objectives. So when you are looking into the flow of your study, the flow of your study should be an exact flow starting from the title, which matches with your research questions, with your objectives, with your conceptual model, the hypothesis, the research instrument, and then from the research instrument, you analyze the data, okay? and then you have the findings, and then from the findings, your conclusion. So this should be like a flow. You cannot have, don't disrupt that flow, and also they should match each other. So your conclusion should be like, your objective should be the question, and your conclusion should be the answer. Never write generalized conclusions. Your conclusions must be based on your objectives. One very important thing that a researcher has to include is the areas for future research. Now, why I'm telling the areas for future research is that today many of the researches, what you have done, there might be many limitations. You might have not taken certain areas. Now, let us say, for example, role of human resource practices in employee well-being. I might take only a single category of respondents. Let us say I've taken only managers. Next time, I have not taken clients. I have not taken my suppliers. I have not taken my other stakeholders. So next, when somebody is doing a research, they can consider all those aspects. So based on that, the researcher can develop areas for future research. So in the process of your research, whatever you have found out, where you have seen that these are various areas where other researchers can touch upon in the near future, you can also include those particular areas. And the last one is giving suggestions. Now again, let it be very, very specific to your research. So don't give general suggestions. Make it very sure that you're giving suggestions only relating to your title. Okay, about for this you can as and when you go through the process of this research, at the end you will be able to give suggestions based on whatever research experience that you have gained in that particular area. Okay, so this is about the entire thesis. Before I conclude, I would just like to come to the last area, that is terminal items. I just left it so that I can take it up later. Terminal items. Now, as I told you, many people get confused between what is bibliography and what is reference. What is that we have to put? Under terminal items, you must put bibliography, not references. What is bibliography? Bibliography is the list of all the sources that you have taken, whether you have cited them or not cited them. If you have specifically cited them, it is called as reference. Okay, so whenever you're using reference, as far as possible, try to use it under the end notes of every chapter. So if you're using it as footnotes, again, because at the end of every page you're writing, you might not require. But if you're writing it in the form of end notes, you can show it as references. Now, references must necessarily be cited. If you're including all other items also that you have used for the purpose of this study, then you can put it as a bibliography. Okay, so I will just show you. You can just show me, the bibliography file. Bibliography, what you can do is you can classify it as books, you can classify it as journals, and you can classify it as other sources, where you can also show the websites. So under bibliography, you can segregate it in the form of books. You can segregate it in the form of not this. So you can segregate it in the form of no. This is the thesis which I would like to show them. The other word file. Yes, this file. So in this file, I'll just show you. See now, bibliography. Now in the bibliography, it started with journals. Now again, that should come in the alphabetical order. Now bibliography, as I told you, if you're using Mendeley, it's not at all difficult, because as far as your bibliography is concerned, you have around 20 to 30 pages, and typing them may be really very tedious for you. So it's always better if you are able to use the Mendeley software. So you can segregate it as journals, go alphabetical order. Then you can show again separately as books, and then books here. So you can give a list of books again, starting from the alphabetical order. If you remember, I've also given you a set of books that you can use. You can also write books relating to your particular area, and also books where you have referred for understanding the research methodology. So in the books you can include that. That's why I told you bibliography is whatever material you have you have referred to. Now, when it comes to the particular topic, you might, in the reference, you might not be able to write what you have given under your research methodology. So in this you can definitely include. Okay, so I'll just show you one thesis now. You can just see that thesis. You will get an idea of how it is shown. Personally, I would suggest you people to go to IIM library. They show you a lot of PhD theses, or you can also go into IISc Department of Management. Good theses are written there. You can also meet professors there, who are guiding students for theses. This is just one thesis that I got. So they've given the declaration, the originality report, okay, and again your, I think they've used Turnitin, your plagiarism test. One more thing I left out was your executive summary. Nowadays people are, are trying to give an abstract of the entire the thesis or the paper or the dissertation what you have presented. So as far as possible, try to prepare a summary of what actually has been undertaken. So list of tables, abbreviations, list of graphs, all this. That's why I told you presentation is very important. So the first chapter, so since it is about banking, so they've started off with an overview of banks, the history of banks, okay, how the scheduled banks have grown, how banking technology has come. Now this, as I told you, at the end of every chapter they have given references. This is what you usually most of them, at the end of every chapter they give reference. The second chapter is your review of literature. Again, as I told, take the particular concepts, and then from the concepts you keep them and try to give a review like a story. Okay, it's just a systematic review that you will be doing. So this is a review of literature. Again, after the end of review of literature, please note at the end they've given gap identification. That means to say, from the above literature, what is the gap that they have identified, and also you can see at the end of that chapter they've given references. Now the third one, as I told you, some people they give an industry profile. So because this person is doing more relating to the financial performance, they've given details regarding what is that they will be doing under financial performance. Now the fourth chapter is your research design that they have taken. Okay, so what is that? Just see what is that they will be doing under research design, that they have given it as an introduction. What is the relevance of the study, the scope of the study, objectives of the study, the hypothesis for the study, the tools that they are using for the study, okay, and the limitations of the study. This all comes under research design. Next is data analysis and interpretation. Of course, here they are, as the title says, they are doing a comparative study of financial performance of private and public sector banks. So based on the various tools that they have told, so they've used ANOVA, then they have used, I think, the variance, the t-tests, so whatever they have used, they have given that in the form of, they've taken the ANOVA table, because they have various different variables here that has to be measured. So different banks here. So they've analyzed between groups and within groups. They've found out the F value, and for each F value, they've given the interpretation. So this is the way they have done the comparative analysis. Now again, they have done testing of hypothesis. Now testing of hypothesis also, they have done it using ANOVA. So suppose you're using different techniques for different testings, please make sure that you put a data analysis plan table, so that in the table you show that for which hypothesis you can give which analysis. So this they have used ANOVA. So for all the banks that they have considered, they are finding out the F value. Now this is the data analysis. So for each and everything, so they have taken return on investment, they've taken capital adequacy ratio, they've taken wages, they have taken NPA, so different variables they have taken. So based on that, the entire data analysis goes through. Now let us come to the last chapter, that is this is the data analysis. Now let us come to the last chapter, that is results and discussion. So this they have presented the entire thing in the form of a table, and in the discussions they've given what is the parameters that they have taken, and in the end they have given a conclusion. Again, please note areas for further research. This is the important aspect of conclusion. Okay, and to conclude, they have given the list of references. Again, they have also given bibliography. So just see here, in the bibliography, they've given books, they've given theses, and in the appendix, they've given all financial performance data that they have taken from the banks. So I will also be sending this thesis to you just as a purpose for reference. So this is it. As far as possible, I've tried to cover in this entire series, starting from the conceptualization of the idea to how this entire research has to be presented in the form of a report. To end this session, a very a hearty thanks to Dr. Bhavani. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhavani, for giving me this opportunity, for believing in me that I'm able to do this. And thank you, participants. It's been a very overwhelming response. And on day 8 also, day 6 also, I think it is 89, around 90 participants. So thank you so much, participants all over India. So thank you, Nisha, again for coordinating this entire session. A big thanks to Nagarjuna Degree College for providing me this opportunity. Now this entire webinar series will be available on NGI channel, and also the PowerPoint presentation. So anything you can go to that particular channel and again view the recorded videos. So over to Dr. Bhavani.
Very good afternoon, all of you, and I'm 100% sure that all of you have enjoyed the sessions by Professor Sandhya. Professor Sandhya is known to me as a colleague for last about 20 years now, so her proficiency in the field is not at all questionable. I have seen the kind of effort that she has put in the last 6 days, and even on the last day, in the last minute, with about 100 plus participants, I think it's a great deal of the kind of commitment from both the presenter as well as the participants. Thank you so much for being with us all through. As I said, these YouTube recording will be available to all of you in about a day or two. Your certificates will also reach you in about 2 to 3 days time, and we'll ensure that all the PPTs are also made available to you. Kindly don't exit the group till we give you all the details of the PPTs as well as the YouTube channel links. Once it is done, of course, we will ourselves disembark each of you from the group. Thanks, Professor Nisha from Nagarjuna Degree College, Assistant Professor. Thanks for all the coordination all this while.
Regarding their feedback form,
yeah,
now the link is being sent.
Okay.
So they will have to fill that up and send it by 4 o'clock.
Perfect.
Only then they will get the certificate.
And also, we would love to hear from you regarding the feedback. I'm sure each of you will help us to know more about what else we can do in future and how else we can have Professor Sandhya for future interventions in the days to come. So kindly, the link will be shared with you now, and it will be open for you. It is already opened. Professor Nisha has already sent it. So request all of you to take a little time now that you have spent so many hours with us. Please do spend 5 minutes and share your feedback. It will be of great relevance for us, and also a great kind of feedback for Professor Sandhya. We are so thankful to you once again, and we'll definitely come out with similar kind of programs for all of you. In fact, on behalf of the entire team of Nagarjuna Degree College, I sincerely thank Professor Sandhya. She's been putting in so much of efforts. I've been there throughout these 6 days, and as a teacher, I'm amazed at her kind of the enthusiasm that she has carried for all these 6 days. So thank you, Professor Sandhya, once again, and we look forward to many more interactions. Her email ID has been available to you, so anytime in the days to come you still want to have an interaction with her, you're welcome to write to her, and I'm sure, knowing her, she'll definitely reply back to you. So thanks once again, and hope the lockdown period has been utilized well by all of us. And thanks a lot once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving a wonderful session. I appreciate your hard work, and thank you for ma'am, those who are giving the last 6 months, 6 days. Thank you once again.
Thank you for participating, sir. We appreciate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Give a wonderful session for last 6 days. Thank for the whole committee, those who are involved in the, not for the one day, required a lot of hard work for the last few months. Thank you, ma'am. Giving a wonderful session.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Your
ma'am.
good name, sir?
Dr. Prakash Mishra. I'm in the Jaipur, Madhya Pradesh.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for joining from such a
Yeah,
long
ma'am.
distance.
Yeah, saw a
Yes, sir.
wonderful last 6 day. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once
Thank you,
again.
sir. Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah, this is
Hello.
Professor Rajkumar, RV Teachers College.
Hi, sir. Tell me, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My heartfelt gratitude to all the organizers, especially you, because you have taken a lot of pain and then organized all the participants in a very, very orderly manner. My heartfelt thanks to Sandhya ma'am. Very in depth, she has explained each and every topic very, very meticulously. Very small things with the personalized touch. How should we go about every topic in a presentation or in the writing also in while finalizing the report also. My thanks to Reading Up also. My thanks to entire team. Do conduct such programs in future also. We are ready to join.
Thank you, sir. Heartfelt gratitude for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Hello?
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please tell me,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Dr. Manjupriya from Coimbatore, Hindustan College of Arts and Science.
Yes, ma'am. Tell me, ma'am.
Ma'am, really, the 6 day session was really a fruitful one to me, ma'am. I have learned a lot of informations about research. Hello?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am. We are getting.
my special appreciation to Sandhya, ma'am. Ma'am, really, she was a hardworking person, ma'am. I got new
Yes.
information about research, ma'am. I enjoyed a lot in the 6 days program, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Means a lot. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye, ma'am. Take care. Thank you.